Good morning. I am Becky Bone, the National Director of Literacy with Scholastic Education Solutions, and so excited to be with you and have this time together as we talk about a very important topic that we know that is near and dear to your hearts. If you will, let me get to my next slide. We're talking about summer learning and acceleration, and so that's going to be our topic today. You'll see in the chat that we've asked you to, if you're comfortable, to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're from. And so we'll give you a few seconds as everyone's logging on to do that. And those of you that are joining us via recording, we're excited that you are playing this back as well. So as we do that, and I have my partner in crime with me today, Ms. Kimone Johnson. She's the Director of Social Media. She'll be coming on from time to time, sharing what's in the chat and helping with the discussions. And so as we begin, I'd like to pull up our agenda for today. And one of the things that we're going to start with is really looking at the learning loss research. We know that is why you're here today, and that really is a big focus of this school year and moving into this summer. And then we're going to look at how we can expand learning with innovative options that accelerate students that really utilize social emotional learning, and then how we can support learning at home. And so then we'll be able to pause and have some reflection time, so you'll be able to take all of that content and be able to reflect on what your next steps are. So as I pause for a second to look in the chat, we've got a lot of folks joining us from Randy in Indiana. We've got Josh in Pittsburgh. We have Ruth Taylor in Michigan. We've got Brooklyn in the house. Welcome. We've got Janine from Illinois. Good morning. We've got Brooke in Idaho. And we've got Janine in Boston. We've got folks from all over. We've got Connecticut here. I'm coming to you from the eastern side of Pennsylvania this morning. And we've got Gina from Easton, Pennsylvania, Samantha from Illinois. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you can join us this morning. And so as we think about what we're going to talk about today and what we're going to address, as everyone continues to log in and welcome and introduce themselves in the chat, I'd like to begin to take a look at the research. And so I've got a research study, a fairly new one that was released in July. And please know that we will share a copy of the PowerPoint with you as a follow-up, so you'll be able to get this link as well. But McKinsey and Company really took a deep look at that unfinished learning from the past year and a half from the effect of the pandemic. And they took a look at both reading learning loss and math learning loss. And so here what you'll see is kind of that historical loss, and then you'll see the loss in the blue line during COVID-19. And then one grade block represents 1 month behind. And so here you'll see this is actually looking at the primary grades, where from basically looking at March 2020 to the summer, seeing a month behind just from the pandemic. And then what they also saw from the summer to May 21 was 4 months behind in the primary grades. And then looking at the intermediate elementary grades, actually saw a bigger loss. And at that same point in the summer, from the first, the end of that school year shut down, 3 months behind, and then that full year to May 2021 this year, a loss of 5 months behind. They also saw bigger losses in math compared to ELA. Both losses were significant, but greater losses with math. And they also disaggregated the data looking at their students of color. And the trend they saw was, on top of everyone's COVID loss, there were additional 3 months of loss from last spring to last summer. And then from last summer to the end of last school year, an additional 6 months behind. And so, as I work with, as the National Director of Literacy for Scholastic, I am very privileged to be able to work with school districts really across this country, including the East Coast. And we saw a lot of these trends with a lot of our district partners and meeting with them. So the other part of this pandemic and this learning loss that is extremely troubling, and we've heard from a lot of you, and the research is showing this, and surveying over 16,000 families, 35% rated that they were extremely concerned and very concerned about the mental health of their child, of their student. And we're hearing this from your district leaders and from teachers and principals and leaders across this country. So the learning loss academically is a challenge, and also the mental health side of things as well. So I'd like to pause for a minute to have a little bit of time for reflection and to see what you have seen in your classroom, in your buildings, and in your district. So from spring 2020 to the end of school year, or spring 21, if you will, how many months did your students fall behind? What trends did you see with math and with reading? Or which groups fell further behind with your students? Did you see it at that pre-K, early elementary or intermediate grades, or did you see bigger losses in middle or high school? And which demographics did you see have a larger learning loss? Was it students of color, boys versus girls, your students with IEPs, your multi-language learners? So let's take a minute and let you reflect on that and add to the chat. And Kamon will, if you will, share with us as people are adding into chat what learning losses, and also any concerns around mental health, what observations and what trends did you see and are you seeing as well?
Thanks, Becky. So far from Karen, she's observed early elementary and students with IEPs.
Thank you for sharing. And we hear that a lot, even though we see that the data from this study found upper intermediate grades. We hear a lot about the primary, and especially around phonemic awareness, that was very hard to translate either in the classroom with mask or virtually. And a lot of students now in first, second grade, they're really seeing those impacts.
And from Gina, she's observed high school kids with IEP almost a full year behind.
Oh my goodness, wow.
And from Maureen, early elementary, lack of phonics and from the phonemic awareness for early learning.
Definitely. We're seeing a lot of those trends echo. And a lot of district partners are talking about how they've got second graders this year that really have never had a full year of traditional schooling. They were about, halfway, 3/4 into their school year when everything shut down. And so really trying to provide a lot of intense acceleration for those students in particular.
It's definitely been a unique experience for all of our early learners.
Unique experience. That's a great way to, right?
A positive twist. We're all in it together.
Right. As we might say in the South, I live in the Atlanta area, bless their hearts, they've had a very unique experience.
Exactly. They're making history.
Absolutely. Love that. Love that way to say it. So when we think about the learning loss, we think about the mental health implications for our students and for our staff too. I'm sure some of you have seen that at the teacher level and at the staff level. Let's take a look and think about, okay, so what can we do? What have we been doing this school year? And what can we do and wrap more support around? So whether it's happening at school and looking forward into, some folks have already started extended learning or are making plans now for extended learning after school between now and the end of the year. Or maybe it's okay, we have some transportation challenges with the pandemic, not enough bus drivers. And so we're going to have to really put a lot of our resources into summer when we will have access to more bus drivers to really accelerate students. Or maybe we're also going to wrap or continue to support that literacy and math learning and social emotional learning at home and give our families additional support around that. So there's a lot of areas that we're seeing a lot of our partners really focus these acceleration efforts to try to make up that learning loss, if you will. And so a lot of partners are thinking about, okay, we really have to redefine summer learning for ELA and math this summer. This summer, more than ever, we know a lot of districts and schools did summer learning last summer, but some of them were, summer is short, so we're going to put it in extended learning. And now that the school year started with the transportation challenges and teacher fatigue, they realize that they don't have all the students in that they need, and they've really got to put more in this summer. So I'd like to share with you a few solutions that are very innovative, that really wrap around acceleration and social emotional learning that can be utilized this summer. And the first one is Lit Camp, which is all about not just acceleration, but really embracing SEL and literacy and bringing the joy back into that summer learning. The author of Lit Camp is Pam Allen, introduced to you here on the screen. She is the founder of the nonprofit Lit League, which is a global nonprofit that's really about equity and literacy across the globe. And so they created Lit Camp to really integrate reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And she wrapped it around the 7 strengths framework for social emotional learning that she and Dr. Ernest Morrell created. And you see those 7 strengths: belonging, kindness, curiosity, hope, friendship, and confidence. And so it wraps literacy around these 7 strengths. And as you look at those 7 strengths, you're probably thinking, we need those more than ever after the pandemic. But it really produces a powerful framework, and it embraces, and what we've done is here with this graphic that my colleague created, showing how it takes that social emotional literacy learning and wraps it around the CASTLE framework for SEL. And we've wrapped, you'll see the 7 strengths around the CASTLE framework. And then we've wrapped all of that around those 21st century learning skills. And so a lot of those frameworks you're implementing and you align your work to. And Lit Camp absolutely aligns to all of those. And so Lit Camp's innovative model is going to take that social emotional development piece we know that is so critical, building a diverse community through that sense of belonging and self-valuing. And then in wrapping that with critical literacy skills, including phonemic awareness, phonics, that critical language development that we know was really lacking with a lot of our early learners from the pandemic. But really bolstering comprehension and fluency in writing as well. And then also making sure that that engagement piece is an equal pillar here and that it's motivating, but not just for the students, but for the educators teaching it, and that it's building their reading and writing stamina. But it's all around what Pam Allen, the author, calls serious joy and celebration. And that's what we see, is that all three of these are addressed, which really supports that acceleration piece. And the way that it engages everybody at Lit Camp in the summer is through the lesson structure, and you see that on the screen. And so if we think about camp, and I'm a former camp counselor, I went to camp when I was a young child, but also through college, and I was a camp counselor. And opening, campfire was the time everyone looked forward to. And so Pam created the beginning of the day is that opening campfire where everybody comes together, introduces the focus of the day, brings in that social emotional learning, that 7 strength focus of the day. And then the instruction starts with that instructional read aloud. And then the teacher does an activity hands-on with the students to bring that text to life, to get them hands-on. And then they move into that focus skill in the reading power lesson. And then bunk time, the other favorite time of the day for campers. And that's when they do their independent reading application practice time. And then they have community lit. That is another transition hands-on activity, sometimes involves games, because we have to have the fun and joy of camp as well. And then we transition to the writing part of the lesson where they're responding to their reading. And then the teacher or instructor pulls it all together with that closing campfire, reviews what was taught, and has celebrations. It has them celebrate around that social emotional learning piece. So maybe if the teacher was focused that day on friendship, she might recognize a student for being a friend that day and extending help to one of their fellow students. And so it's an engaging structure. It's focused on literacy acceleration, on social emotional learning, and is highly motivating. And one of the things we know is that teachers love teaching Lit Camp and students love coming. In fact, we've had districts, New York City schools, when they first started with Lit Camp, they actually had to increase the amount of student selection, student spots, because after the first couple of days, word got out and students loved it so much that more families and more students began attending. And that's what we see, is that teachers and instructors love teaching it because students are so engaged. One of the reasons why teachers love it is because the Leader's Guide is so supportive. It provides a 4-page lesson that really defines the objectives, the daily objectives, lays out the materials, really supports around that opening campfire, the vocabulary, has the songs, the opening activities or the opening games for the older students. Really provides that support around every stage of that lesson. The read aloud has prompts with specific page numbers, the graphic organizer for that reading comprehension lesson, that independent reading bunk time, all the way to the writing power and the closing campfire. So what this does, it really minimizes the planning time that teachers have to put into, or the instructors have to put in, which is important because we know that there is less planning time for summer implementation, and it scopes out that time. And so a Lit Camp lesson can span anywhere from an hour to 2.5 hours, and we can work with you to really customize that lesson planning to meet your summer needs. And the materials that are included, over to the left in the chart, you will see the bunks. You'll notice that the bunks are organized by color, and we do that intentionally because there are no grade levels on any of the printed materials. Because we know that as you look at that orange, the orange bunk is for those first graders rising into second grade. But we know that, based on learning loss, that you might need to step it down a bunk. And so it really allows flexible implementation for the bunks to meet their needs. And it really is designed, it can span 4 weeks, 5, or up to 8 weeks, depending on your time frame for literacy. It's going to include either 150 to 160 books for the students and the teachers. Students will have a portfolio folder that they can hold on to their graphic organizers and their writings. They'll get wristbands for Lit Camp. The leader will get their specific leader's guide, as well as a copy of Pam and Dr. Morell's professional book, Every Child is Super Reader, that provides a lot of embedded professional learning around the 7 strengths. And Lit Camp spans from pre-K all the way to 8th grade, or 8th graders rising into 9th grade. And what's also supportive is that we, in addition to Lit Camp, we also provide Lit Camp in Espanol for pre-K all the way to rising 5th graders. And just like it's going to have that equitable access for the English version, it's going to have those same flexible lessons for anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks of summer instruction. And again, the same from 60 minutes to 2.5 hours. And just like with the English version, it's going to have the leader's guide in Spanish, 150 to 160 Spanish, authentic Spanish and bilingual books. And it's also going to have the student folder and the wristbands as well. Now, and part of Lit Camp is the bunk time for independent reading practice, because we want to make sure that students have the skills, that they're getting the skills and being able to apply them. That's part of that acceleration piece. And with Lit Camp, we have several options for independent reading. Whether you are looking for physical print books that they can read, we have a bundle that includes the 7 strength libraries that are organized by those same 7 strengths in the Lit Camp instruction. So at each bunk level, there will be a 100 book collection all the way up to the 6th grade bunk for independent reading library. And this is important because sometimes we know that summer programming may not happen in that teacher's building, or that teacher may not be in his or her classroom, or the school may not have access to that school library. So this is a great way to provide every teacher with that 100-book library for independent reading that's completely aligned to that social emotional learning framework. Now, we have sites that are like, we also want to provide additional text. And so we have Scholastic Literacy Pro that's going to provide over 2,500 ebooks, digital books for independent reading. That's going to provide a lot of support for that bunk time for independent reading. But it's also going to provide a lot of audio support with natural voice for striving readers. A lot of times that is the audience that you're especially trying to target for summer. So it's going to give them additional support. Literacy Pro is also going to include assessments to support your to be able to track and support that the students are making the growth that they need to make. And so it's going to include the Scholastic Reading Measure for grades 2 and higher, which is going to be a reliable Lexile assessment to measure their reading comprehension. that the students will take online. It's also going to include the Scholastic the Reading Readiness Measure, which is an early reading screener for pre-K up to second grade to see if they're ready for reading. And then it's also going to include for all students Think More comprehension assessments that are book quizzes on those digital ebooks, if you will, assessing core comprehension skills. And so those Think More skills are going to look at skills such as cause and effect and compare, contrast, key ideas and details, which align to your standards. And here you see a sample part of the Student Think More Skills report. So your teachers will be able to log in and see how they're doing on each particular skill, as well as see how many questions they've had on each of those skills. And then the Scholastic Reading Measure report will actually share in this particular class leveling report. Here you'll see where it's showing the beginning of that, summer session and or that middle of that session. So it's going to show where they fall in their proficiency ranges from below basic to advanced. So Literacy Pro is going to support LitCamp with that bunk time, that independent reading and more, but it's also going to provide you those assessments to really monitor and make sure students are making those accelerated gains. We also have with LitCamp 2 additional personalized adaptive learning programs to support students this summer. The first being Scholastic First, which is a highly adaptive foundational reading program that's really going to target pre-K to second grade learners. That's really going to accelerate them and break down the reading process for them. It's based on the latest gamification theory, so students absolutely love working in it, and they can utilize it both in summer in your programs, and then they can continue to use it home if they have a smart device at home. And the reports are going to give your teachers in your building some incredible data at the very discrete level around their foundational reading skills. And then for students K-5 to really continue to do that deep work around building word knowledge and deeper comprehension knowledge, we have Scholastic Word, which is really going to unlock the 2,500 word families that make up 90% of the text, the words that students encounter in their text. And again, this is also built on the latest gamification theory. And this is going to provide your teachers with great data to continue to personalize and differentiate learning at the summer level. And the reports from all 3 of these can also be used for the following school year as well. So all of these wrapped together will really provide a robust accelerated offering for students for ELA. And we also provide very engaging professional learning for your educators teaching summer. We know that for some of you, it may be your teachers. For some of you that are experiencing teacher fatigue this year, it might be parapros teaching or a combination. We even have district partners that have been able to reach out to local universities to tap into the pre-service teachers to teach summer when they've not been able to get enough certified teachers to teach summer. We have had many district partners that have had great success last summer in that model. And so we provide that program training either in person or virtually. We can also provide coaching support. So if you are in a scenario where parapros or pre-service teachers are teaching, we can provide that push and coaching support either in person or virtually. And we've also had extensive program agnostic professional learning as well. So in a nutshell, that is that LitCamp model. So one of the things that I'd like to do is pause for a minute to hear from you in the chat. So thinking about literacy and thinking about social emotional learning, And thinking about math acceleration, what are your district plans so far to address these areas with your students? So I'll pause and reach out to my trusted, esteemed colleague, Kamon, to see what she's seeing in chat.
So as we're waiting for comments in the chat, I'll have to say that I love that the books are color-coded and that the grade levels are not specifically noted. I'm sure that's extremely empowering to both the teachers and the students.
Definitely. It's one of the hallmarks of the program that they really appreciate. In fact, last summer, a lot of districts and schools took their incoming first graders and put them in the very first bunk that had a great emphasis around building phonemic awareness, because they knew those students that had been on virtual learning all year were needing additional support in that area.
That's so great that it provides the flexibility of choice as well.
Definitely. And if you've got high flyers that you want to continue to accelerate, you can move up a bunk as well.
Completely. So we're still waiting for comments, but is there anything else that you've noticed as a trend for schools that are addressing SEL?
Some of the trends that we're seeing, thinking back to this past summer, we had many districts that their whole focus last summer was really, their primary focus really was around social emotional learning, as they were getting those students back in physically for the first time. They really wanted to make sure that they were addressing those social emotional learning needs, and for their teachers as well. And they found that the more integrated it was with the curriculum, the more impact it had, because it didn't seem like a separate piece, and when it was integrated in with the literacy or with that math learning. And it wasn't as heavy a lift for the teacher as well. They felt that a little bit went a really long way with their students. And they're seeing that focus continuing this summer, because again, they can't get a lot of the students they need the most into that extended learning environment this year, unfortunately.
That's terrific. I love that 7 strengths, the 21st century skills, that it's all integrated and makes it as seamless as possible.
Definitely. And the Castle framework, we know that they have been making some tweaks this year to really address the social emotional learning and the inclusiveness piece. In fact, one of the 7 strengths, belonging, is that new piece that they're really layering in to be more inclusive. And so that it's exciting to see even Castle is embracing that piece and making, a great response to current needs of students' social emotional learning.
That's terrific.
So I've talked about one innovative solution, which is Lit Camp for Literacy, that is pre-K all the way to 8th. And then it's in English pre-K to 8, and then it's in Spanish pre-K up to rising 5th graders. We have another solution, our Scholastic Scholar Zone, powered by Bell Excel. That is another solution that is innovative and that you can use for acceleration. It's really exciting because it provides both ELA and or math, and it embraces and wraps around social emotional learning, is inclusive of STEAM. It includes it has a deep history of evidence-based research, as well as brain stretches and physical routines. And so you might be using grant funds or working with partners that require that rigorous third-party evidence. And our partnership with Scholastic Scholar Zone is with Bell Excel, who's been supporting summer learning for over 30 years. And they partner with some of those organizations that you see on the screen, such as the Urban Institute or the RAND Corporation. And so this research is going to really provide that ESSA's evidence standards that you might be needing and looking for with your summer programming, or that's critical to your Title I or 21st century funding. And so with Scholar Zone, it's going to really provide a full inclusive bundle that's going to address reading and writing and or math, and deep embedded professional learning for teachers through the Bell Excel platform. And so it can even give you that platform for attendance. It can make this summer programming all inclusive. So it's going to provide robust teacher support. On the screen, you'll see those materials for the teacher. So that way, again, if you've got some parapros that are supporting your summer learning with your teachers, it's going to give them that nice embedded wrap support with their instruction. And on the ELA side, it's going to include lessons with instructional read alouds, with small group instruction. It's going to have writing instruction, that differentiated small group instruction, as well as unit projects. And then on the math side, again, you're going to have a robust teacher's guide to guide that instruction with pacing guides. And it's going to include that whole group instruction, small group and independent work. It's going to include manipulatives for those hands-on pieces for that math instruction, as well as math read alouds and math leveled readers, and our Scholastic Math magazines as well. And here are some sample schedules for both ELA and for math. And so it's going to allow for that at the ELA, 30 minutes of whole group instruction, then 20 minutes of small group, 20 minutes of writing, and then 20 minutes of independent work. And then at the math side, it's going to have 30 minutes of whole class, then 30 minutes of that differentiated small group, and then 30 minutes of that independent application piece. And at the math level, it's really going to give them a lot of opportunities to engage in problem solving and hands-on interactive activities that are really aligned to the 8 standards of mathematical practice. So here you'll see a sample page from the lessons on the math side for the teachers. So you'll see that support that they have, the hands-on piece for the students, and then the Dynamath, the math magazine pages here. And then here you'll see sample pages on the ELA side, and this comes from the Reading and Writing Journal. In this case, this is grade 6, because the Scholastic Scholar Zone will span grades K all the way to 8th grade. And the scholars have their own work text, so they'll be able to work directly in that consumable book, both for math as well as for ELA, as you see here on my screen. Here you'll see a sample page around the informative or explanatory writing lesson for that teacher and for that student as well. And in that journal, they have their space to do their writing piece in response to their reading. Just like with Lit Camp, you'll also see a large emphasis on social emotional learning and wellness, because again, any innovative program that's going to accelerate students has to have this embedded. And so the social emotional learning program with the Scholar Zone was created in partnership with Sanford Harmony, which is a research-based social emotional learning program. And so the activities are on the Bell Excel platform and are lessons that are embedded into the daily, the scope and sequence, if you will, in the daily schedule. And what we also include with the Scholastic Scholar Zone are well together now physical routines. We did these physical routines in partnership with Reeboks, with their nonprofit. And so this is where they'll physically be active, where they might do 20 jumping jacks to really activate and get that brain ready for learning. And so those daily mindfulness routines are also included in really scoped into that daily schedule. And then there's also at-home enrichment that can be done when students get home or if you do have some virtual learning environments. And this is where we incorporate the arts, we incorporate STEM, as well as the most requested virtual field trips. These were created 2 summers ago in response to the pandemic and that virtual learning. And they were so well received and popular that they were asked to continue on with those. And so for each grade band, there are 12 virtual field trips online. And these activities are really going to guide your scholars through these digital online experiences. And they're curated so they're very easy to use. And so here you see some sample ones that allow students to virtually explore the world and beyond. So some of those virtual and field trips include a trip to outer space and visiting the Museum of Natural History and being able to take tours of national parks and travel and experience farms and experience fine art museums. And so those are just a few of those 12 virtual field trips that students have access to at every grade band. When we think about Scholastic Scholar Zone, I think the best way to take a look at it is in how inclusive it is to accelerate students in ELA and to accelerate them in math and really be able to have that evidence-based programming wrapped around social emotional learning and STEAM and brain breaks as well as physical activity. And so we have many district partners that utilize the Lit Camp for ELA and then utilize Scholastic Scholar Zone for math. We have partners that use Scholar Zone for both ELA and math, and we have partners that might be looking just for ELA or just for math. So we have that complete flexibility for you. And so if you're interested in either of those, we'll connect you with your Scholastic account executive. They can ask more questions and give you sample access to these so we can help support you make the best decision that's going to be the best fit for your particular needs this summer. Now, the last solution that we have to think about, because this is for in-person or, virtual or kind of hybrid models. Hopefully your summer programming will be all virtual. Will be all in person. But to meet your needs, we know that supporting our families and supporting our students at home is just important. So for those students that do come to summer, but especially for those students that don't come to summer, we want to make sure that they don't experience summer slide on top of the learning loss from the pandemic. And one of the things we know from one of the leading researchers in summer learning loss, Kim and his associates have found that when students read in the summer, they do better in that fall year, that upcoming school year, as long as 2 things are present: that they have access to books that match their ability level and interest, and that there's a focus on comprehension with the adult or parent at home or with the teacher that is supporting them. And that's when they see incredible gains. His research, they found that students made from 50 to 80 lexile gains when these 2 things were present. And so when we think about being able to support students reading at home, whether or not they come to our summer programming, we have My Book Summer that's really going to support that summer reading, stem that summer learning loss, but also support that family comprehension focus to help accelerate their reading and their lexile gains in the summer. So our My Book Summer program is going to include summer packs of either 5, 6, or 10 engaging books with a balance of fiction and nonfiction. You'll see on my screen here, they're diverse books, they're curated, so they are really motivating, engaging titles that students can and want to read. But we also provide a program guide, so it gives you great ideas for launching a summer reading program that goes home. And it includes a summer reading journal that's developmentally appropriate for students, that really encourages them to write in response to their reading. And we also provide think sheets to really help stimulate and support that comprehension piece, and colored pencils to help them respond to their reading creatively. It includes a postcard so they can share their summer reading experiences with other family members or with their school. And it also includes a Summer Express workbook that includes 10 weeks of at-home programming with reading, with writing, with grammar, with math and science as well. And in addition to that, really what we encourage our district partners or our superintendents is to we'll partner with you to create a custom district letter that launches, that goes home with these wrapped books, shrink-wrapped books, that really helps extend the importance of summer reading and that superintendent's messaging to their families at home. And when we think about that custom bundle and that importance of family support at home, this is a closer look at those think sheets that really develop comprehension. One side of those think sheets have the learning on my own. So this is what the student will work in developing their vocabulary and comprehension and higher order thinking skills connected to those specific book titles. And then the flip side of that think sheet has the family time, where it has reading tips for that family member to support their reader, and has prompts for both the reader and the family member to make personal connections to that book and to that text. So each think sheet is specific to that title. And again, this connects back to the research that Kim and Associates found to really accelerate reading. So when we think about all of summer learning and we think about the My Book Summer Program and how that can target not just your students in summer learning to support them at home for all of the summer, but for all students for the whole summer to stem that summer learning loss. We think about Scholastic Scholar Zone that can support you both in ELA as well as math for K-8. And then we have Lit Camp that can support your students for pre-K all the way to 8th grade in English, and pre-K to rising 5th and 6th graders in Spanish as well. Let's pause for a minute and think about, what are your plans around literacy and math learning at home in particular, to support them at home. And we'll give you a few seconds to let you think about your reflections and what that might look like for that home support and home learning. And again, I'll reach out to my trusty colleague, Kimon.
Thanks, Becky. While we wait for some feedback, what recommendations do you have for school leaders who are at the very beginning of forming their plans for extended learning this summer?
Great question. So if you're at the beginning stages, what we see a lot of our partners do is looking at the data to see what students they want to target, and really surveying their stakeholders involved, talking to their teachers around what summer could look like and their interest level in teaching this summer. Reaching out to families to find out what their needs are around summer. And then creating a summer plan around that, looking at your transportation, to make sure that the students all have equitable access to summer learning. And then, thinking about what do our students need and our families and our teachers need in terms of how much time each day, how many days during the week, and then what content areas are we going to address? And then really, how are we going to pull in that social emotional learning piece? And then looking at the curriculum that's best going to match our needs. A lot of times, really looking at something that is different and not just more of the same, or being able to really differentiate and target students' needs to really be able to address that acceleration piece in the summer.
Thank you. Those are all actionable, so really appreciate that. We have feedback from Maureen. She said that they plan to have a fully in-person program.
That's wonderful. We know that is the goal of everything that you all have been through in the pandemic, and it's the resilience piece is just admirable, and being able to have that in-person piece, especially with those early and beginning readers, so they can really build that oral language and work on that phonemic piece. We know that was a challenge during the pandemic.
From Emily, we have ESY.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely critical. And we have with summer, what we've seen some sites do is also looking at and talking with families and their teachers and planning. After this year, they may find that teachers need a break, that if they have some time off, then they might be willing and able to teach summer. And so some partners will do summer as a jump start. So they'll take a break after the school year, and then summer will begin later in the summer and roll right into the beginning of next school year. So it becomes more of a jump start program. So that's another idea to consider that we've seen a lot of partners do.
That's fantastic. And I know that some schools are developing themes for their summer camps. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. We see that a lot. And so that those themes are a great way to get the students very engaged and excited about coming. We have a lot of partners that utilize Lit Camp, and they actually embrace that camp theme. And so when the students come in, each bunk, the students, they have t-shirts and that corresponding bunk color, and the instructors are, dressed like camp counselors. They've got their vest on and their whistles and clipboards, and they really embrace that summer camp theme throughout the summer. And again, students walk in and they're like, "Ooh, this is different." Yeah, they're like, "This is so different from the school year." And they're like, "Okay, I'm definitely coming back tomorrow." And they realize that that camp theme is embraced all throughout. We've had teachers set up little tents in the room for that bunk time, independent reading time. They'll have flashlights for students for that bunk time, independent reading time. And when the kiddos are engaged like that, that really engages the teacher as well. And we actually had a school district in Michigan last summer that after the pandemic, their teacher union actually said, "Our teachers have agreed to teach summer only if they get to teach Lit Camp." They said that's,
wow.
Yeah, can you imagine?
That's incredible.
It is, it really is. That's how powerful and how important that social emotional learning piece is for your instructors and teachers as well.
Completely, really brings it full circle. We have an additional comment from Agatha. ESY needs to be engaging and different, as well as effective in terms of acceleration.
Absolutely.
She adds, when the students are engaged, teachers are engaged.
It really matters. And, when we think about engaging our students and our teachers, that family piece is important to engage them as well. And we know that after the pandemic and all the virtual learning, that they want support, but they need it to be, easy for their students to do at home and for them to support them at home.
Completely. Well, the packages that you've shared, they've been well thought out. I really like the addition of the postcards as well, because that really brings it all together, because students are proud and excited to share what they're doing at these different camps.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen some creative things happen with those postcards, and even with theming with the summer take-home reading program, where they'll pay teachers every couple of weeks to actually do an online or phone calls to students, where students will send home those posts, send to school those postcards, and then teachers will almost kind of do like book clubs every couple of weeks with the take-home books as a way to engage them, to continue engage them throughout the summer. We had a school district that used the theme Summer Reading is Hot, and they actually distributed books every few weeks at all of the fire stations. Now,
Oh,
yeah, and
very
they
clever.
saw incredible turnout because, who doesn't want to go to their local fire station?
Mhm.
And so the kids would pick up the next book. They would have food drop off with those as well. And just really great turnout around that. Now, that was pre-pandemic, so we know with social distancing, that can be accomplished as well.
I love it.
So what we'd like to do is transition. We want to be mindful of your time, but take a few minutes for action steps. So as you're thinking about, those of you that are with us live, or if you're watching this on replay, with everything that you've been thinking about with your summer programming and your plans around accelerating student learning this summer, we want to give you a few minutes to reflect on your action steps, because we know after this ends, you're right back into email and planning and your million responsibilities. So what steps are you going to take for your summer acceleration? So whether you might be next going back and talking with your team and or your families or your stakeholders, maybe your board members, around those summer learning priorities based on this year's data and what trends you're seeing with your students as well as your staff. And then you might be creating a plan to address those specific pandemic-related gaps, including the social, emotional, and the mental health gaps that you're noticing this year. Maybe you're then going to outline the professional learning needs to support it. If it's teachers that need that support, or teachers out of field teaching that, or your parapros, or maybe those parent volunteers, or those pre-service teachers with a local college or university. And then maybe identifying partner with school partners for that social emotional learning, literacy, and math summer learning. So when you return and when you finish, what might you do next? So I'll be quiet for a minute and allow you to reflect. You might want to jot that down. And if you want to add that in chat, you can definitely do that. And so in a minute, we'll come back and see what your thoughts are. Okay. So as you're finishing up jotting down and thinking about your action steps for accelerating summer learning, and again, we'll send you a copy of this PowerPoint. So again, you can kind of come back and think about your stakeholders this summer in ways that might look different than previous summers. to really target certain groups, and based on your data and based on students' needs and family needs and teacher needs as well. Just know that at Scholastic, we're here to support you every step of the way. We've already been having planning meetings and sessions and conversations with partners around us. It's never too early to start thinking and doing that planning, and we're really hearing from our partners around that, and how critical that is. And I believe Kamona's put in the chat a link for you to reach out to your local Scholastic account executive for next steps. So maybe you want to learn more about these solutions or just talk more around that planning process. So whether it's for summer programming in ELA or in math, or in take-home summer reading in a summer reading program. And some of your account executives might be also dropping their contact information. So you can either use that link or reach out to them directly. And I'd like to connect one more time to my esteemed colleague, Kamone, see if there's anything else in chat or any last thoughts.
Chat right now is a little quiet. It is very early, and just want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining. You will receive your professional development certification tomorrow. And again, we're happy to showcase any of the demos that we mentioned today. And you can arrange that by following up with your local Scholastic rep. And if not, you can reach out to Becky Bone. Her contact information is on the next slide.
And I'll put you in touch with your right Scholastic account executive. So on behalf of everyone at Scholastic, we truly appreciate all that you do for your students, for your teachers and staff, and for your families. We know it's a school year like no other, and your resilience is admirable. And as you continue to think about meeting the needs of your students and your families and your staff for this summer, we'll be happy to support you every step of the way. We thank you, and we hope you have a fantastic day.